Hi, welcome to Something Simple and Light with Tolu Alao. In this podcast, we talk about three key areas: process improvements, manufacturing excellence, data analytics, and visualization. The goal of this podcast is to discuss practical ways to improve your operations day in, day out. Wow, there's so much to cover in this episode, and I really hope that you pick one or two things that you can apply in your operations immediately. Fantastic. Let's jump into today's discussion. Welcome to today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about excess movement. Right, it's been an interesting ride so far. We've talked about value, we've talked about in episode 2 variation, we talked about excess inventory in episode 3. Episode 4, we also looked at quick changeover, and the last episode was episode 5, where we talked about OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. I hope so far so good. You've been able to, pick one or two things that you can implement in your operations, immediately and get some effectiveness or efficiency improvements, right? Fantastic. When we talked about value, one of the things I mentioned that we're going to look at in depth later on was the 8 types of waste, right? And one of those types of waste was what we talked about in terms of excess inventory, right? And today we're moving to the next level. We're going to talk about excess movement as a type of waste, right? And just a quick recap: remember, the 8 types of waste are transportation, inventory, which is excess inventory that we treated before. We have movement, right, which is what we're going to talk about today. We have waiting, we have overproduction, overprocessing, defects, and skills, right? And that stands for team woods, right, like we discussed before. Right, so what's excess motion really about, and why when we say we're having excess motion or excess movement as a type of waste, right? What we've discovered in principle and in practice, right, is that many times in our operations, in our processes, right, we tend to have unnecessary movement of people or equipment or machinery, right, in order to deliver on a particular product or service. So what you want to do is use what is called a spaghetti diagram. So what a spaghetti diagram does, and there are a lot of tools when we talk about process improvement, but I want to focus on spaghetti diagram for the next few minutes, right? So what spaghetti diagram allows you to do is to visually see. So you would have the layout of your production floor, right, where value is being created, your office or wherever you're creating value, right? And you want to be able to map how your guys, who that's your operators or your staff, right, in order to, for instance, fulfill an order. So let's say I work in an eatery, right, and I want to service a customer from the beginning to the end. What motion is required? Does the where the food is being staged, right, does the server require to move from that point, take plates, talk to the customer, move back to this point, serve the food, come back here, right? So you want to be able to map that motion, right, and then see where you have opportunities to remove excess motion, right? Your staffs or your operators moving to too many places back and forth just to be able to fulfill one order, right? And that's where the name spaghetti comes from, because when you draw that motion, right, you tend to see a lot of intersection back and forth, going across. So your operator will end up going back and forth, if your process is not properly arranged, right, streamlined. And then you see that at the end of the day they are not efficient, right? They are spending more energy on doing things. They are having to strain their backs, they are able to stretch, they are having to walk long distances and all of that, right? So what you want to do is remove excess or excess motion, right, or movement that is not required, right? And one of the tools that we use to do that is to use the tool that is called 5S, right? I'm going to spend some time in the next episode to talk about what 5S is, how 5S is used, the whole framework for 5S, right? So let me not go get into that, but that's a tool that can be used to organize your work, because what you want to do in terms of a countermeasure for excess motion is to reduce the amount of
motion that is required, reduce the amount of energy that is required to get to things, to find things. When your place is not organized, people have to, go back and forth looking for things, or, even the layout, right? A is not beside B. So moving from A to B means that I have to first go to a different location, then come back to where I started from, and then move to C. And you want to be able to reduce all that back and forth, right? So this is something that is critical, and this is something that you want to critically look at your operations. How am I, how am I moving from place to place? How are my staff moving? How can I make, things better for them? Because again, this is also, borders on their health and their safety, right? So you want to be more efficient, and again, you want to do it in a safe way that is healthy for your people and healthy for, all that is required, your machinery and your equipment, right? So a quick recap: excess motion includes any unnecessary movement of people, right, equipment, or machinery, right? And this is what we want to reduce. So we want to only, move if we have to, right? We want to design our processes in such a way that as much as possible, everything can be done almost on one spot, or at least within, arm's reach, right? You're collecting the order, you're serving, you're passing it on to the next stage, and all of that, right? And when you look at, the way production systems run, this is the thinking behind having an assembly line, right? You have everything on one line, and then every equipment is focused on doing one part and passing it on to the next stage, and then you move on, rather than, moving left, right, back and forth, right? Every part fits into the next part, and then you move to the next part, and all, right? So that's something to think about this week, right? So the assignments, again, the task this week really is about, looking at evaluating your processes, evaluating the motion, that is required to deliver value in your business, and seeing how you can, remove excess motion. And when we get into some deep stuff next week, when we talk about 5S, we would even take it into another level, and then you're able to create even more value for your customers and for yourself, the business owner, right? I hope this episode has been worth your while. All right, fantastic. I trust you've been able to pick something from today's episode, and I look forward to hearing about your success. For more content like this and to keep in touch, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Tolu Alao. You can also subscribe and follow me on YouTube, also at Tolu Alao. Until next time, just give me something simple and light.